Panthers in 5. The Cats defeat the Bolts in Tampa Bay to take all 3 road games in the Gulf, and it was another high-scoring affair for the Panthers, and it was the depth that showed up once again.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, May 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. If you're on YouTube, make sure to press that like button down below. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com. Fire TV Locked On to learn more. So the Florida Panthers advance to the second round for the 4th straight season. And for the Panthers, after being down early for them against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the difference in the game was after Sam Bennett went to the penalty box for a second time for a slash on Victor Hedman. Earlier, when he took the penalty, the Tampa Bay Lightning scored on the power play. But after the Panthers killed off the penalty, Sam Bennett finishes on a breakaway, and it was a night for the Panthers that it was just the depth showing up. Eetu Luostarinen getting a 4-point game, Alexander Barkov getting his first goal of the series, and that third line was the story of the game as the Panthers defeat the Lightning by a final score of 6-3. Panthers win the series 4-1. And here to break down more of this game between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which now the postseason series is 2-2 each. He is former host/producer for the Florida Panthers from Fox Sports Florida, but still is very involved with keeping up with the Panthers. Frank Forte. Frank, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Armando. It's actually the first time this season I had a couple of schedule conflicts when you had asked me previously. So happy to do it, especially after a series win.
Yeah, no doubt, Frank. And I'm glad that I got you at a good time, knowing that it's the summer and not really busy when it comes to the college sports for you. But let's just discuss this game. I mean, it was to think that Tampa Bay coming in without Brandon Hagel, Panthers coming in without Aaron Ekblad, who served the first of his 2 game suspension here. And for the Panthers, I mean, and the Lightning both, it was just a lot of speed going back and forth between these 2 teams. And I mean, Tampa Bay gets the low to high play to get the loose puck in the low slot and then scoring. And then the Panthers just also the fact that the 4th time in this series, the Panthers are able to get a goal off an icing. They draw the penalty after a faceoff win and then convert just 11 seconds later. Just like 11 has been a theme in this series. Yeah. I guess the last 2 games they score on the power play. Carter Verhaeghe scores for him, and then I mean, and for the Panthers, able to get control in the second period, which they were still tight, getting in the face of Nikita Kucherov, and then the third line that Lundell, Eetu, Marchand line, they were the story of the game for this one for the Florida Panthers. How did you see this game as the Panthers clinched the series?
Yeah, I thought there was a couple things that were remarkable about tonight's game. Number one is the amount of speed that both teams were able to generate through the neutral zone, very different than the first 4 games of this series. I thought there were a lot of scoring chances, at least in the first 2 periods, both ways. I thought it was also remarkable there was very little of the nonsense or the post-whistle stuff that you normally see between these 2 teams. I mean, obviously for Tampa, but for Florida wanting to close this out as quickly as possible, I think they both understood the gravity of that, and they couldn't get involved in that kind of stuff. Or bad hits and winding up in the box and taking a 5-minute penalty. So I think it was remarkable. They mostly stayed away from that stuff. Both teams did, because I think they understood the gravity of the situation. Obviously, Tampa gets eliminated if they don't win, and the Panthers, I said this on Twitter earlier after they had won the first two games. Keep your foot on the gas, because when Tampa plays well, they ooze confidence. Their group has been there and done that, and you don't want to give them any room to breathe or any belief that they could come back in the series. And again, contributions up and down the lineup. The third line was amazing tonight, and shout out to Bill Zito. I'm assuming he had no way of knowing Aaron Ekblad was going to be suspended when he made the Seth Jones trade. He was simply looking to upgrade the blue line. But think about, if he hadn't made that trade, where would this team be right now? I don't think they'd be in as favorable a position. And, Brad Marchand didn't score a lot of points in the regular season, but I thought he played very well. Excuse me. I thought he played very well. The way he hunts pucks in every zone, unless you watch the games, it doesn't show up in the box score. And of course, he's built for the playoffs. And I still check myself every day and try to wrap my head around the fact that Brad Marchand is a Florida Panther. And let's all admit it. I freely admit it. I hated him when he was a Bruin.
Mm-hmm.
I respected his ability to play. I hated all the other nonsense. But he's on our team now. Yeah. So, he's one of those guys. He's like Sam Bennett. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, you can't stand him. But he is a Panther, and thank goodness he is, because he really showed up in this series, whether he registered a point or not. To me, he was all over pucks. He was all over Tampa's players. He was in on the forecheck the other night. When he beat the icing and set up a goal for Lundell. I mean, I just thought he played really, really well in this series.
Consistent hustle plays for Brad Marchand, and just throughout the whole series for him, and that's kind of what he continues to bring for him, and then for just how he was able to get the Lightning out of position. I mean, to have the blue liners come all the way to the blue line for them, and then also if they didn't close the gap well, it drew Kucherov in order for him to set up Lundell tonight. That's another thing. And then we saw a few plays. There was one where when they were going on the long change period for them, there was a nice little backhand play that he got to Lundell, and then a return feed. It didn't ended up in a goal, but that was just another way of just how well they were able to read off each other throughout the game as well. So that's another thing that was just incredible of what he did. But and also, I mean, the fact that there's no power play goals for either team through games 2 to 4, and then both teams at least get one on the power play for them, and then the Panthers able to just to get in on the scoring for them. 16 of 19 in the series. And to think, I know there wasn't a lot of rough stuff, but I mean, going into the third period with that open ice on the roughing, and even there was a setup from him to Sam Bennett during that open ice, because they thought he was going to dump in or stay at the blue line. Right. They didn't know what decision he was making. Then Sam Bennett gets on the cross, hits the crossbar. But also, it was also the fact that it didn't need to be on the rush for the Panthers to be so great at their back checking. If it was those plays going from the blue line to the mid slot, the forwards were already collapsing, and we saw Nikita Kucherov frustrated once again, and that was a big key to this entire series.
Well, no doubt, Kucherov, he was fairly invisible this series, and I think that's a great credit to the Panthers. And you mentioned the power plays and the fact that the Panthers in this series, against the 5th best, I think they were 5th best in the regular season, Tampa, in power play percentage. The fact that they held them 15 straight power plays without a goal, I mean, that's how you win a series 4-1. And, you were talking about the little things that Marchand was doing. In that sense, he's a lot like Barkov. It's the little things that you have to be at the game or if the TV broadcast is good enough, that if you're watching the puck, you might not see, but he does a lot of little things right that helps the team win. And, great job by Luostarinen tonight. I mean, a guy that's, hardworking, honest player, not a big scorer, but to see him come up with an offensive night like he had tonight, that was really something. Lundell, Marchand, Luostarinen line. We all thought that Marshy was going to play with Bennett and Chucky, right? When we got him in the trade. And so props to Paul Maurice. He put that third line together, and they're obviously responsible defensively, and whatever they throw in offensively. And, Lundell had a couple of goals in the series. Lusty had the big game tonight. So, that line was, as I put it on X tonight, that line was elite tonight. And that's the difference. Tampa didn't have that kind of play out of their depth guys.
No doubt. And again, making a difference tonight as the Panthers just found a way once again up and down the lineup. No passengers type of night for the Panthers here. But we're going to transition to segment number 2. We're going to discuss our 3 stars of the game and the moment where we knew the game was won. We're going to discuss this more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you the full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check in on your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Segment 2 here on this Thursday, May 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday where the Florida Panthers defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final score of 6-3 to win the series in 5 games for the Panthers here. So 3 stars of the game for the Panthers here. Although faced 29 shots against, but Sergei Bobrovsky, I got to put him as a 3rd star because he didn't have as much of a highlight reel save as he did on Matt Dumba in Game 2 last year, which that game was tied for this one. Although the Tampa Bay Lightning did find a way to tie the game after the 2 saves from Eric Chernak and then Gage Gonzalez. Big moment in that game as Bob was getting on top of the crease, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning were coming up the gut. Number 2 star, Brad Marchand for the Florida Panthers here. Definitely a big impact as we spoke about on this line. Technically didn't have a shot on goal for him, but still two assists for him. And then obviously I had to go number 1 star, Eetu Luostarinen, only the 5th Panther, to have a 4-point game in the postseason. So rare territory that Eetu Luostarinen finds himself in. And also an honorable mention, I want to put Nico Sturm, who continued to put on the pressure at the blue line whenever they were on the PK, and again being key to just winning, getting first to those loose pucks and getting those clears. So honorable mention is also Nico Sturm. So Frank, your 3 stars.
You read my mind. I had the exact same 3 guys. I thought Bob's double save. Well, he made a save early in the second period, and then the double save that you were referring to a couple minutes later. And I don't know what the expected goals were on those shots, but I got to figure it was more than 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a key point in the game, that he kept Tampa from grabbing control of that game. Marchand. And I say this about star players in every sport. even if they don't score, they find other ways to affect the game and put their imprint on the game. And that's what Brad Marchand did with, he did have a couple of assists, but you mentioned no shots on goal, but his impact on the game was way beyond that. And we've already spoken about Eetu. Honorable mention, boy, you can go in a number of different directions. Obviously Bennett had the huge goal. I thought Steph Jones was really good tonight. And how about Dmitry Kulikov still at this stage of his career playing
doubt.
really, really solid hockey, right? The fact that the Panthers were able to get him last year on a 1 year and then they re-up him. Yeah, it's 4 years, but it's not a lot of money. So, eventually if he slows down, it's not a tough buyout. But I thought he's been solid all year long. And so yeah, those were the guys that, like you said, there are no passengers. Everybody had a hand in this one tonight.
Yeah, and then the first save you're talking about was Dmitry Kulikov going for a hit near the half wall, and then it opening up Anthony Cirelli right up the gut, and then Bob making that stop. I said, it's funny because I tweeted saying, "Oh, that's Bob's best save of the night so far," and then just a few minutes later, he one-upped it in that one for him. Just a big moment in the game, and even to think that in this series, Frank, the Panthers didn't get 30 shots on goal at all throughout. And then even Paul Maurice after the game spoke about, hey, this was a high volume type of shot of game. You see superstars on the other end, but when those guys get the pucks on their sticks, you know that it's going to be quality. And to think that for the Panthers here, just in the first period alone, even though it was tied, I'm looking at their shot attempts. Of the 16 shot attempts for the Panthers, of the 29 shot attempts, 16 landed on goal, while for the Lightning, it was 9 of their 20. So over 50% for the Panthers. They were finding the space. And the thing is, the Panthers are best when it comes to battling along the boards. But you think of 2 rush goals for the Panthers, it was kind of like beating Tampa Bay at their own game.
Yeah, they were. And I'm not going to take credit for this. I think Tim Reynolds of AP was the first one to put it out tonight that I saw. The Panthers have now scored 5 goals on Andrei Vasilevskiy in Amalie Arena 4 different times.
Wow.
Nobody else has done that. No other team has done that. So that's pretty special for against the guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they've really done a great job against Tampa the last couple of years. You go back to, several years ago when Tampa came in and they swept the Panthers in 4 games, and then that led to the coaching, that led to the change and the trades and all that stuff. And, they have flipped this thing on its head. So, major props to the Panther organization and Bill Zito and all the way to the top to Vinny Viola, because they have absolutely flipped this thing on its head. And I have a great deal of respect for the Tampa organization. When Mr. Vinnick took over and, they became a model franchise in the league and, went to the final 3 years in a row. And as Panther fans, that's all what we aspired to be like that. And we were jealous. There's no, let's admit it. We were jealous of that success, the cross-state team. Well, the script has been flipped, and thankfully it has, because it's been amazing. I gotta do this right now, Armando. I follow this team. I covered them from their inception, right?
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago. And when they won the cup last year, I had to commemorate it. So
hold on, let me full screen this.
Too.
So that is beautiful display of art.
Yeah, after 30 years of going through a lot of ups and downs and being a part of the broadcast team for 11 years, I said, if they win a cup, I'm doing this.
Oh, that's amazing. nice piece of art there. And I don't. Well, that stumped me. That stumped me a little bit there. But hey,
you weren't expecting that one, were you?
No. But hey, I love it. Don't get me wrong. But also, I mean, it was another display of the Panthers just getting the easy, not easy, but the higher percentage shots for them.
Yeah.
Once again, for them. I mean, maybe the only one that you say maybe Vasilevskiy would want that back was the one that that Sam Bennett had coming out of the box, because it was still a good amount of distance for him. Beat him on the far side, which is a good segue to the moment where we knew the game was won. Honestly, when Sam Bennett scored that, I'm thinking the Panthers are going to find a way. 5 minutes before the end of the second period, the Panthers are now 22-0 in the postseason when leading after 2 periods, when having a lead under Paul Maurice. I'm thinking the Panthers are just they're still rolling the lines. They're still getting the pucks in deep, winning their battles. I had a feeling that they were going to pull it out.
Yeah, I sort of had that feeling. I'll go like 80%. I thought that would do it, but I don't trust Tampa at home because they've done it so many times. And then when Luostarinen scored to make it 5-3, that's when I exhaled. And I said, okay, we're moving on. We're moving on.
Yeah, and big stop in the neutral zone by Lundell to set up that goal, and just the centering feed.
By the way, we all forget this. Lundell's still just 24 years old, right?
Maurice likes to mention that a lot about coming in. He was 21, and then
been
now
in the league. He stepped in at 18, and it seems like he's been there forever. And he's played so many games and so many playoff games, right? And we forget that he's still just he's under 25.
Yeah, played more playoff games from that draft class of Stützle, Alexis Lafreniere, Quentin Byfield. So that's a pretty decent draft class, despite Lafreniere having a down year for him. And Ottawa is maybe they upset Toronto, who knows? But we'll get to more of that in segment number 3. But I mean, most playoff games from that draft class of 2021 for
good stat.
Excuse me.
Well done, Armando.
So yeah. So credit to Bill Zito on getting him number 12 overall in that draft for him. But big props once again. Drafting well, responsible trades, not giving up a lot most of the time for him. So big credit to the front office. And also a good quote from Paul Maurice when it comes to the Battle of Florida. He's mentioned that the fact that the ticket sales reps have an easy job when it comes to selling this rivalry from both. So
no doubt.
One great quote from Paul Maurice. You could expect that for him. But we're going to transition over.
Paul always wins the post-game press conference. You know that.
Oh, yeah. It's so fun to cover him, no doubt. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss more about how the Panthers and just getting this series done early, and the fact that the Panthers get to relax a little bit before round 2. We're going to discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV 4K stick. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K device. No console required. Just pack your pair controller, subscribe, or sign into the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, and as easily as you stream your favorite shows. And you can head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Q 3rd Gen. And once again, head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, May 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Frank Forte, former host / producer for the Florida Panthers when it was previously called Fox Sports Florida. And Frank, 4 straight years of the second round for the Panthers here. And the fact that if you told me that back even before they won the President's Trophy in 2022, I'm in disbelief that they are in the position that they're in right now. But hey, it goes back to the credit to the front office and just the aggressiveness. And we talk about this so much about on the ice, but just once again off the ice with just the new practice facility and then just continuing to result at least on the ice. And it's just a team that this region could fully get behind.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And you go back to the 11 years that I worked, with the broadcast group, and they made the playoffs twice, 2012 and 2016, and they were out in the first round both times, albeit, a great series with the Islanders and a great series with the Devils in those two instances. But, the fact is they didn't get out of the first round. And to do what they're doing now, it takes a commitment. I mean, we see it with the baseball team down here. If you don't have a front office and an ownership that's willing to do what's necessary, it's awfully hard to get anything accomplished. And, we've talked about this owner, we've talked about this front office, and they have pushed a lot of right buttons. There's very, very few missteps that they've had in the time that, that Bill Zito got here and took over. And like I said, and here's the other thing I wanted to mention, Armando, when everybody was kind of pushing the panic button late in the season when, they were resting guys, maintenance days, whatever you want to call it. And they didn't win the division. And, their attitude was, we don't care where we finish and we don't care where or who we have to play. We have a belief that we've done this the last 2 years. We can go anywhere and win. We can play anywhere and win, play anybody and win. And I think, we saw the fruits of that in this series, guys not having to grind all 82 games out, giving Tkachuk the ability to I still don't think he's 100%. I think if you watch him play, I think you can see it, but the intangibles are there. And, he scored 3 goals in the series. So, and I think he only played 10 plus minutes tonight. I think he was under 11 minutes. But, the third line stepped in and, they produced tonight. So I just think that giving some of those guys some rest in the last 10 games, I think is really good. Because when you look at the amount of hockey they've played over the last 3 years from, President's Trophy, going out in the second round, Stanley Cup final, it's been a lot of games for this core group. So I think they did the right thing. They did the smart thing. I think some of the fans didn't understand it or didn't like it, but the belief in that room that they don't care where they finished as long as they were in. Because remember, at one point, Ottawa was only 4 points out of putting them into the wild card spot.
Yeah.
Right? But, that didn't happen, obviously. But, they said, hey, if we don't have a Game 7 on home ice, we don't think it's that big a deal. So credit to them. As they said, there's a belief in that room. These guys, by and large, have been there and done that. So, we'll see where it goes from here. Toronto, boy, they, losing that Game 5 the other night, now having to go back to Ottawa, and the pressure in that market for a team that hasn't done it, it just gets exponentially bigger and bigger every day that goes by.
Yeah.
Now, will they get it done? Yeah, maybe. And it's going to be interesting no matter if it's Toronto or Ottawa in the next round, the battle of the Tkachuks or the Leafs again. Their fans after Game 3 were already pulling out the "We Want Florida" again.
Yes, okay. I saw that.
We saw how that worked out last year. So, but it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. And 8 players, let's not forget, 8 players in the 4 nations. So not like a lot of guys were getting
the other factor about the rest, that I tweeted that. Good. Thank you for bringing that up, because I tweeted that out before the series. Was I interested in 4 nations? Would I watch it? Sure. But I have to tell you, I did not give 2 nickels for who won. The only thing I was worried about is getting 8 guys out of there healthy. And it didn't happen. So that had me worried. Because, was it fun to watch? Sure. But again, I didn't really care who won. I just wanted our guys to get out healthy. So thanks for reminding me of that factor.
Absolutely. And Matthew Tkachuk, as a result of the injury from from the Four Nations, just his time on ice log. Just under 12 in game 1, just over 13 in games 2. Games 3 and 4 were just over 16, and tonight 10. And even Paul Maurice mentioned post game of how important it was to get Evan Rodriguez, such a pro. Evan Rodriguez, who's played in multiple places with superstars McKinnon, Crosby previously, and to think that he was helping at least push the pace with that line. So that was kind of like getting someone on your shoulders, and you're not necessarily breaking something, but at least bringing them back to at least a high speed, and keep them upright. That's the best way to put it. So
yeah,
that's
Rodriguez for me is really important guy because he can play anywhere, first line to fourth line. He adapts to his line mates. He adapts to whatever the style may be. He scored some big goals in last year's playoffs, so he's a guy I like having on my team.
No doubt. And here's one narrative that we all got wrong. Going back to months before even the Ekblad suspension, we were thinking the Panthers need to win the division because number 2 and 3, they're going to beat up each other all throughout. Yeah. It's going to be a long series.
Yeah.
But how the turntables, as they say in the show The Office, Steve Carell.
Yeah.
Now it's Ottawa and Toronto. That's going to at least 6 games, while Florida Tampa Bay ended earlier than even I expected. I predicted Panthers in 6. I don't know what your prediction was, but that's another thing I got wrong.
Yeah. I don't know that I made a prediction on the series. I think I said, I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen, because it wouldn't surprise me if the Panthers went out in the first round or if they made it to the finals again. I thought the range of legitimate outcomes was that wide. I just didn't know what to expect. I kind of figured Panthers in 7, but I thought it was going to be a closer series. You talk about 2 and 3. Look at LA and Edmonton, and Edmonton again is on the verge of eliminating the Kings in the first round again. And if you're LA, you're like, if not this year, when? Because Ekholm is not there. The best defenseman that the Oilers say, he's not there. So these things can work in funny ways sometimes. As you know, when in hockey, as long as you get into the dance, you got a chance.
And even John Cooper mentioning that win in Boston was a big part of just the change.
I don't think he's wrong.
Direction.
I don't think he's wrong.
Yeah, and 2 years to the day. That's the great thing. 2 years to the day. April 30th, 2023 was, who would have thought that the Panthers would get to this point?
And don't we all remember the Bob save on Marchand that could have
in Game 5
the series, right?
Mm-hmm. Now he's on the other side.
Yeah.
Which Marchand continues to talk about, just the amount of respect he had, and the fact that he's been on both sides of it. So he's been through the highs, he's been through the lows of everything. He's been up in series, he's been in an elimination game. So the experience factor for the Panthers up and down the roster from the experienced coach is just continuing to press on, as the Panthers are once again advancing to another second round series. And now we await the winner of Ottawa Toronto. We hope that it's all the way to 7, but for me, I'm confident that they'll match up well against either of the teams. But that's what we'll talk more about tomorrow. If the Leafs find a way to win, we'll discuss previewing the Leafs series like a appetizer. But if the Senators win, we will talk tomorrow on the pros and cons and the strengths and weaknesses of each matchup for round 2, which that's a great place to end this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Frank, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Okay, online, FAUsports.com. I'm at Florida Atlantic University. Also, if you're in Florida, you get FanDuel Sports Network. Our TV show with Florida Atlantic Sports is on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We got 2 more shows left. We close it down after the end of May. And we're having if you don't follow us, we're having a very good spring. Our softball team will be in the NCAA tournament. Our women's tennis team and our beach volleyball team are all in the NCAA tournaments in their respective sports. So we're having a good spring. And got a new football coach in Zach Kitley. We're very excited about him. Former OC at Texas Tech, where they had a high-powered offense. So we're hopeful on that front as well. But yeah, always look at FAUsports.com. Go to the video section. Inside the Owls Burrow is the name of the show.
Awesome. And once again, shout out to FAU Club Hockey for their wonderful
Division
season.
II national champions.
Yeah, so big shout out to them, growing the sport in the state of Florida. Once again, not only on the professional level, but on the club level. As in the ECHL, Florida Everblades and Orlando Solar Bears are facing off in the second round. So another part of growth for for hockey in this state. But Frank, thank you so much, and I will see you again very soon, my friend.
All right, thank you very much, Armando.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Frank Forte. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day.